Hey, I'm Jackson Lanzing.
And I'm Collin Kelly.
And you are listening to the Captain America Comic Book Fans Podcast.
Well, greetings, Cap fans. Welcome to episode 243 of the Captain America Comic Book Fans Podcast. It is a special episode. We've got a great interview for you today. And by the way, I'm your host. My name is Rick Verbanis. I've got a co-host. He is the best one out there, and his name is Bob Lucius. Oh, Bob. When angry, count to 4. When very angry, swear.
I'm not familiar with that.
No?
That self-help process.
That is attributed to one Mr. Mark Twain.
Mark Twain. All right.
Yeah,
All right. It reminds me. My wife went on a mindfulness hike a few days ago. Took one of our neighbors, and this is like for the organization that I run. We do this mindfulness hike. It's at night, and so Casey and her friend Michaela went up and did the hike, and then all weekend long, she was like, "You look stressed. You should try this technique." And so like a half a dozen techniques. I was doing like. Lots of relaxation, mindfulness techniques, but I just swear.
There you go.
Just to do the trick for me. So,
so why am I greeting you with that particular quote from Mark Twain, Bob?
I don't know.
Yeah, it's a tough one.
Yeah.
It's a little bit of a tough one. But it does have to do with our guests today in both aspects. So today we are having back on the show, it is Jackson Lanzing and Collin Kelly. And Bob, this is their what time on the show?
This would be their 4th time, Rick.
4th time on the show.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And by the way, you don't often hear it on this show, but there may be a little swearing. So I wanted to give everybody a little bit of a heads up on that too. So hide the kitties. If this is kind of a PG-13-ish, but maybe a little bit more with a few words to be submitted. So anyway, so I thought that was an apropos quote.
That's nice. Yeah, good. And the warning was helpful as well.
Oh, yeah. I know how your virgin ears get a little sensitive.
Yeah, very, very, very verklempt. So.
Yeah. So, Bob, it is June 4th if you're listening to this episode on the day it comes out. Hard to believe June is here. I felt like January was like the longest month in the world. And then May just went real by fast.
Yeah. And now we're careening toward the halfway point of the year. Can you believe it?
No, don't say that.
No,
don't say that.
Don't say halfway.
No, because that means then after that happens, it means like it's going to start getting darker every day.
Oh, you're right. You're right. It does.
Yeah.
It does. Yeah. Well, yes, indeed. And it does. I'm not looking for it. It's been hot down. I'm in, as most listeners know, I live down in South Florida, and it's been unseasonably hot already. In the middle of a drought. So I'm hoping, I hate to ever say this, I'm hoping for some rain, but it's man, I have a feeling it's going to get a lot hotter before it gets cooler down here.
Yeah, I'm not having that problem in New Jersey. So this week we have rain and high of like 62.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. Yeah. Now again, we're recording this a couple weeks earlier, so this is like mid-May.
Even so,
yeah, I know.
You're supposed to be in Mayflowers.
I hear you.
Right.
I mean, we opened the pool and everything, and it's like, it's nice to look at.
Yeah. Put some boots in it or something.
I mean, listen, man. At my age now, I don't get in water.
I love the way you say that. It sounds so fancy that we opened the pool.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. Well, when I say that, I mean like we paid someone to open the pool.
Right.
I am not.
It wasn't a big ceremony or the ribbon cutting.
No.
All right.
Yeah.
Pull the cover off. Put some chlorine in it. Okay.
I don't get in water if it's less than. I mean, ideally it's 80, but like it has to be in the 70s at some point. Yeah.
I think I told you this I think it was about 3-4 years ago. My wife talked me into getting a pool heater.
Yeah, you did. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you said it was a great idea, right?
Yeah, it was a fabulous idea. We haven't turned it on in like 3 years. So yeah, it looks great on the side of the house though.
You just don't like water, do you?
No, not
You don't
really.
like the beach. You don't like submerging.
I don't. Yeah.
You do take a shower though, right?
Occasionally when I'm told I need one. Yeah.
Oh, okay. As talk about if you're listening on today, June 4th, we have a couple birthdays. So today, June 4th, would be one Mr. Joe Rubenstein.
All right. Well, happy birthday, Joe.
Yeah, we had Joe back on the show way, like 4 years ago. Back in episode 8, he was on the show, and it was a great interview. He's a talker, and he had some great stories. Great stories.
Well, who else you got?
On a somber note, George Perez would have been celebrating a birthday on June 9th. Gone way too soon.
Yeah.
Was a big fan of George. But speaking of Joe Rubenstein, so I recently I'm a big fan of Kevin Maguire.
Mm-hmm.
And Joe inked Kevin back in his early Justice League days when Kevin was on the book with writers J.M. DeMatteis and Keith Giffen. And so I'm a big fan, and so loved the duo of Blue Beetle and Booster Gold.
Okay.
Right, they were just a fun duo. So anyway, this I got this package in. I saw this online and I ordered it, and it is. Here we go.
Yeah, it's nice,
isn't it? I mean, it's an 11 by 17 two full figures here. You've got Blue Beetle and Booster Gold, and Booster Gold's blowing a bubble with some little bubble gum. And anyway, so it was penciled by Kevin Maguire, but inked by Joe Rubenstein. So
neat.
Just got that.
Just got it.
Yeah.
I love that feeling of opening up a package.
I know, right? That's always, even though like you paid for it yourself.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. I think that's probably why like companies like Amazon do so well.
Yeah.
I think there's like a dopamine hit when you're on your feed on your phone, and and the algorithms are set to make sure you get that hit, so you keep scrolling.
Here come the cat videos. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I think there's probably some sort of dopamine hit for getting a package.
Oh, there surely
is.
Yeah. Yeah, that immediately dissipates seconds after opening it.
Especially when it's combined with, and here's the bill.
That's right. Oh, then why did they put that in the box?
Yeah. But listen, we've got a fantastic show for the listeners today. As I mentioned, Jackson Lanzing and Collin Kelly are back for their 4th time, and I can't wait to talk to them because they just wrapped up their recent Thunderbolts miniseries, and we have lots of questions from our listeners that we need to get to. So we should probably get them out of the green room.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's dive into this.
USAA knows dynamic duos can save the day, like superheroes and sidekicks or auto and home insurance. With USAA, you can bundle your auto and home and save up to 10%. Learn more and get a quote at USAA.com/bundle. Restrictions apply.
Whatever the occasion, effortless elegance is right this way. Because Hilton brings you new ways to stay courtesy of the Nomad London. And it doesn't stop at award-winning dining in a space draped in velvet and illuminated by vintage chandeliers. No, this day goes beyond with unparalleled personalized service and attentive hospitality. Oh, and did we mention the Nomad London can be booked using your Hilton Honors points at Hilton.com? Hilton, for this day.
So we're here with Jackson Lanzing and Collin Kelly, a.k.a. the Hive Mind. Welcome back to the show, guys. This is your fourth time on the show, and it's been a year and a half since we've had you on, so we're excited to get caught up.
Always a joy. It's wild to me to think that we haven't been on for a year and a half, but I guess that's comics, right? Like, I think the last time we spoke was at the end of Captain America. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Thunderbolts was just kicking off. The first Thunderbolts miniseries was just kicking off. So, and before we get into questions on your writing and catch up on that kind of stuff, but what did you two think of the Thunderbolts movie?
Oh, loved it.
Yeah, it was incredible.
I thought it was great. I often kind of, sometimes we over at Hive Mind HQ can we sort of talk about our work, a little bit jokingly, but there's some seriousness to it, that our work is like your faves go to therapy, right? It's always like we take our characters and we put them through these things that are really about trying to reckon with their core traumas or their core concerns or their core fears and come out the other side of that. And I feel like we've done that now with Cap and the Guardians, certainly with Bucky. That's been like a hard, huge, long Bucky story that we've done. And so seeing Thunderbolts bring that out and be so specifically about that, right? To eschew the big villain fight for effectively like group therapy was, I thought, actually really validating and very cool. It felt very hive mind coded compared to most of the MCU. And then, that the Revolution outfit showing up in that end credit sequence was really the cherry on the cake. We were kind of blown away by that. We didn't know that was coming. So that was a remarkable thing to be in the theater and see. That's the first time anything of ours has been directly adapted. So seeing that come to life like that was a real trip. That was awesome.
And not even just to mention that it was just a rad movie in general. I thought their execution of the century was so ding dang cool. They really were firing on a lot of cylinders for that flick, and I'm very happy to see it in theaters.
Yeah, we covered it here on the show. We had a live YouTube channel conversation with the listeners like the weekend it came out, and everybody, well, I would say almost everybody just gave it, huge ratings.
Excellent. Well, and as I mentioned in another place earlier, this is our current run of Thunderbolts is Thunderbolts versus Doctor Doom. So in a lot of ways, they're going to have some interesting stuff to mine. I'm not saying they will for sure be pulling from our work, but a man likes to think. It sure would be cool if they did.
Well, it'll certainly turn a lot of eyeballs to your work, right? I mean, I think a lot of folks are going to be picking up your Thunderbolt series as well as the Doomstrike series, because a lot of eyeballs that maybe weren't going to read those books before are going to definitely pick them up.
I hope that's true. Yeah, you
100%. Yeah,
it's one of the really interesting things about these movies is that they do kind of cycle old stories through. You know what I mean? So give it a year, this pops. Thunderbolts Doomstrike is out in trade. Thunderbolts World Strike is out in trade. You've got 2 volumes of Thunderbolts that tell the end of this sort of Bucky Revolution saga we've been doing. Presumably matching the suit in the movie just feels like it gives a great opportunity for people to dive back, ideally dive all the way back into Sentinel of Liberty and run all the way through. Because I think what people will now, be able to see now that we've ended our time with Bucky, right? The Thunderbolts Doomstrike was the last issue of Bucky that we're doing, at least for the time being. We're handing the character to our good friend Sam Humphries, and I can't wait to see what he does. Given that character has been such a focus for us for the past, 5 years, right? Or 3 years, 3.5. When did Sentinel start? 3.5 years ago? It's been a minute. So being able to say we've really been sitting on this character for a while. We've taken him down a story. We've discovered who he is and uncovered a lot of territory on him. Now people will be able to go back and look from Devil's Reign Winter Soldier all the way to Thunderbolts Doomstrike number 5 and see a full arc for Bucky that takes him from a character who is sort of tortured by his past and doesn't feel like he has a lot of agency over his life to a man who has very much reclaimed his identity and found his own legacy and found his own way of being. So I'm really excited to see how that threads for people in retrospect, and I'm very hopeful that people will check it out once Avengers Doomstrike hits, or Avengers Doomsday hits.
Jack, I haven't told you this. I recently picked up a new hobby, which is amateur bookbinding. And one of the things I am very excited about is to take all of my Bucky Barnes comics and finally assemble our own office copy of what we like to call the Revolution Saga, which is all those disparate stories collected into one big omnibus. So we'll have one for the office, but that is our dream for Marvel, is to release a Revolution Saga omnibus.
That would be awesome.
We shall see. Wouldn't that be incredible?
I'd be down for that. Yeah,
absolutely.
But until then, I will make it myself.
So speaking of Thunderbolts Doomstrike, so number 5, the final issue to the story, just came out a couple of weeks ago, and ending a crazy ride for Bucky and the team versus Emperor Doom. And we've had several questions come in from our listeners, and I feel this is the perfect one to start with. It's from our patron Ash Barnes, and she asks,
"Hey Ash,
for 3 years now, you guys have been in charge of Bucky's narrative, fleshing out the character and giving him new layers of depth in a thorough way that hasn't been done since Brubaker. What has been your favorite part of your journey writing Bucky Barnes?"
I think for me, there was I think there was a point when writing Bucky's. So I think for me it's Captain America and Winter Soldier annual number 1, which was the sort of special we did to explore Bucky's explore the sort of origin of the Outer Circle and how Bucky fit into that story. And it ends with the Love having this sort of conversation with Bucky where she inspires him to think differently about the way that he is operating there and think differently about the way that he's operating in general. And I think that that's really like this pivot point for Bucky. And we got to surround it with all the stuff that we love, with history and character and tension and weird sci-fi, and like all of this stuff was like surrounding this really sort of pivotal character moment for Bucky. And I think that issue really to me feels kind of like the most us version of that story. I'm really very proud of that issue. I think it came together beautifully. Kev Walker just absolutely murdered it just as we were heading into Guardians with him. So I'm very proud of that issue. It was written almost entirely in like one day. I have like a lot of sense memory for writing that issue. So it was a really beautiful time. And I think very much to me, the kind of apotheosis of like, oh, we did it. Like we'd been saying for 6 months to a year, to a year to Marvel before that point, and we're going to make Bucky the new Revolution. And they'd be like, sure, kids. And that was the first time I think we were like, we did it. And we could see it, and we could see how it was going to work and how it was going to change things for him. So that was a really beautiful thing. I'm very proud of that moment.
How about you, Collin?
I mean, that's a dang great answer. I genuinely look, if I can come around and just say the corniest possible answer, but it is the evolution and revolution, of him and Steve's relationship. I just think that being able to take as two guys, as one half of a deep friendship that matters the world to me, right? Being able to tell this story about how you can clash and disagree with and fight with someone you genuinely care about so much. But if you genuinely do care about them with that kind of degree, you will not just accept them, but you will do your best to understand them. I like to say that we like people because of their strengths, but we love them for their weaknesses. Finding a way for these two men to really connect and be vulnerable with each other, I think is incredibly powerful and just a great reminder that Bucky Barnes, Captain America, their real strength is never in their muscles, but in their empathy.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think the fact that we got to tell that story surrounded by some fucking bitchin' shit. I mean, I think we can all agree that we have layered in, like my second answer would be Bucky getting one over on Dr. on Dr. Doom at the end of Thunderbolts World Strike. Like nothing better than seeing Bucky Barnes absolutely on top and kicking ass. but ultimately it's the vulnerability of a broken and then healed heart that I think is always going to stick with me as the most important core of what we wrote.
Let's talk about that. As far as like this last episode, last issue, you had the opportunity to kind of come full circle with Bucky and Steve's relationship, right? Like we see at the end of 4, Steve shows up and he's holding his arm, you know, and he says a Steve line, "Can I lend you a hand?" kind of type of thing, right? And so, but in issue 5, you get an opportunity for the two of them to really kind of come full circle from a lot of what has happened previously in your Sentinel of Liberty series, because this is really the first time they've seen each other since then. And so, how important was it for you guys to make sure you had that full circle?
I think that was.
I mean, it was everything.
Yeah,
yeah,
and that was something we asked. We've been doing this book with Alana Smith since the beginning, right? Alana's been our editor since Sentinel of Liberty #1, really since Devil's Reign Winter Soldier, which was our first, really the first step along the Revolution saga. So that journey has been with Alana the whole time, and she's aware of the story. She knows where it's all been. She's been right there with us. And so when we came into Doomstrike and we put together the outline, we were sort of putting it together, and we realized that, especially because we found that thematically it was really reaching the end of the story that we had been seeking to tell. It was really getting Bucky to the place where I think if we'd done any more stories with him, I'm genuinely not sure that I would have considered it part of this saga, because the character gets to the point where he's gone through everything he can in this thematic. Like, he has quite literally become a revolutionary against a giant one world government, and nearly lost his life and his sanity and his friends and all of that as a result. So whatever other stories we might tell after that, thematically they wouldn't be more about revolution than the thing we're doing now, right? This could be called Thunderbolts Revolution and it would be accurate, right? We call it Doomstrike because it's a Doctor Doom book and we had World Strike and Doomstrike, but I think it is easily you could also easily think of it as Thunderbolts Revolution. And that, seeing that, knowing that we were going to be going to that point, felt really important to have at least one more beat with Steve, especially because he really stayed out of the Straczynski run, right? We haven't seen Bucky and Steve interact a lot. So because they've been on their own journeys, because they left as friends, because we knew that would be the moment, throughout the book, we've been teasing the idea that Steve might show up. In fact, all of issue 4, issue 3 is written as an intelligence report from Nat to someone, from Black Widow to someone. That someone is Steve. In retrospect, if you go back and look at that, that's her convincing Steve to show up. Issue 3 is entirely Nat being like, Bucky needs you. You gotta step up. And then in issue 4, he does. And then at the very end, and then in issue 5, they're able to fight alongside one another. He's able to put that arm back on him. So anybody who is like, I don't like this shape-shifting arm, good. It's over. It's done. It's gone.
It's gone.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it.
He's back to getting that old-fashioned arm that Steve took from him back in Sentinel 6. But that's to us, that's great. That's you set a thing up, you pay it off. So we were able to set that up, and years later we were able to pay that off. And now here in this moment, as he gets that arm back, Steve and Bucky get to fight back to back one last time, right? That felt like such an important final moment for these two men, as well as that final conversation that they have in the Quinjet after all of it is done, where Steve, rather than saying, Bucky, you gotta stop this, which I think he probably would have done back before Sentinel of Liberty. He would have looked at what Bucky is doing and been like, what you're doing is suicide, you gotta stop this, you almost just died. Instead, he says, should I be worried about you? Is this a concern? Like, how much do you want me to trust you here? And I'll abide. And Bucky is able to look at him and say, don't you think you should be doing this too, and be right? You know what I mean? So I think, and that to me is like, there you go. That's the whole arc. We've moved this story from a story where Steve was the protagonist to a story where Bucky was the protagonist and Steve is learning. And that was great. It's a really beautiful arc we were able to take these characters on. But it needed to be the two of them at the end in order to do that. If it hadn't been, I think I would have felt like I would have been running around pitching a Captain America Winter Soldier #2 shot, right? Just so we could do that. But I think it's really lovely that we were able to end it in Thunderbolts and make it part of this event, so that ideally a bunch of people read this book who didn't read the Revolution saga and now can go back and see how they got to this moment, and what a moment it is.
One last question on Bucky from me, and that is the last time you were here, Collin, you said writing Steve Rogers makes you better people, makes you and Jackson better people, which begs the question: what does writing Bucky Barnes make you?
I should have expected that question. Way to turn it around on us. It is interesting. I think Bucky is just so much more human, right? I think the thing about Bucky is really, he's writing, let's see how to put this. If Steve is inspiring us to be better people, to write Bucky, we need to be writing ourselves, because Steve inspires Bucky to be a better person, right? Writing Bucky is almost writing something incredibly authentic, because Bucky knows he's flawed, right? Bucky knows that his natural instincts aren't towards, the best of us, unlike Steve. And he sees Steve as that thing that we all should be really kind of growing towards and pushing ourselves to. And that does bring a little bit of uncertainty to yourself, right? And I think that is important for a character. It's certainly important to Bucky. But I would say that the journey of this, writing this is effectively the catharsis all of us must go through of realizing that's no way to live, right? Like, you can be inspired by someone, but not emulate them. You just need to learn from what they've done and then have that confidence in your own choices. So in a way, writing Steve is a monolith. Steve's just a perfect boy, right? Yes, he has flaws, but his fundamental core ideology has never been shaken, really. Bucky has never had that fundamental core ideology, much like all of us, feels shaken. And through his relationship with Steve and his own experiences, is able to kind of create that wholeness that he needs to be around full character. So cathartic. Short answer, it's very cathartic writing him. You get to write your own worst impulses or your own fears and distresses, and then bring it around to how you can be the best version of yourself. And Steve Rogers, as a little ghost behind you, claps you on the back and says, "You done good, son."
Well,
and,
but see,
your heart is healed.
See, I want to argue that a little bit, because I don't think that you write Bucky in order to get a pat on the back from Steve. I think that the framework of Bucky, in the way that Steve makes you a, quote, better person, and I agree with Collin on that. I feel like what writing Bucky has done is make me more radical. It has created a premise by which I can look at the world and say, I need to change that. Because I think that's what Bucky's journey for us is. It's a story of somebody who, I think Steve looks at the world and says, plant yourself like a tree and say, no, you move. I think Bucky's journey has been, sometimes you got to chop down the tree. And so for me, and I think that isn't always something Steve's going to clap you on the back for. You know what I mean? I think sometimes that's going to be a thing that Steve goes, wow, man, that's dangerous. And Bucky says, yeah, you have to be dangerous sometimes. I think that, to me, is the distinction between those characters. Again, like, not to discount anything Collin's saying. I agree with that personally. I fully agree. You're writing your own flaws. That's what makes the character cathartic. But I do think that, looking back at what he left a mark on me, I think he probably made me more revolutionary, insofar as he made me look at injustice and be more interested in throwing myself in front of it a little bit. And I hope he does that to the readers too. I think that's, in many ways, I think people like to say these characters aren't political, and I think after a fashion they aren't, but I think after a fashion they really are. And from a very, like, soul level, knowing that these characters are there in their ideology to back you up when you stand against oppression, when you stand against injustice, when you stand against that which would destroy other people to give you comfort. I think Bucky doesn't truck with that, and I would hope that writing him has made me more willing to not do that.
And the ghost of Captain America just clapped you on the back and said, good,
wow, shit, man.
Good
all right.
job, son.
All right, fuck. All right, you're right. Damn it. And that's the hive mind at work. You just saw it work.
I love it. So I got to ask you, I think it was the last time that we talked. I asked you a question about how you interwove real world history in your stories. And we talked a bit about that. And you've done it again here in Thunderbolts Doomstrike, particularly with the mention of Sergei Nechayev, the 19th century Russian anarcho-communists. And which I love, by the way, because hadn't been familiar with Sergei, had to do a little deep dive, a little reading beyond just Wikipedia, looking into this stuff, trying to better understand the sort of the impulse here, and also his relationship to Bucky in the revolution. But I want to ask you again, like, is this part of your method of madness when you write as the hive mind, right? You're really creating a dual layer story here. You're creating one that is very superficially enjoyable, but you're also creating something more substantial that for folks who do want to dive a little bit deeper, there's really some meat on the bone here. And then I got to ask you, obviously, going and looking at your historical references, you're well read. So I got to ask, what are you reading right now?
All right. And before you answer that, I just want to tell you this is how amazing this is, because if all our listeners know how much Bob puts research into our episodes, the fact that you got him to look something up ahead of time, kudos.
That observation, that's a lovely observation, and actually one I've never really thought about in terms of like Jack and I's origin. Our origin story is books, right? Like a lot of us, books are it, right? And even as adults, there's few things you can do worse than not reading. And I just think it's something that we take for granted, that characters read books, right? Like, and what they read, in the same way that what we consume shapes us as people, we bring that to characters. I just in our Star Trek run, Scotty is a big fan of Murakami, right? Literally at the end of this last issue of Thunderbolts, there's a beautiful reference to this old Parisian war song, right? Like, pulling things from our Star Trek obviously pulls really heavily on Homer. Wearing our literary references on our sleeves actually is something I didn't really realize we do, but in almost every work, we are calling back to some piece of content that really helps shape us or those characters. That's just an interesting observation. Thanks, Bob.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's fascinating because, yeah, I haven't really thought about that either. But I mean, you're quite right. We do. So, yeah, even just thinking about this widely, like, Guardians almost does a flip on that insofar as in dealing with his own trauma, Quill kind of puts a Western frame on the whole world, and uses those reference points to help himself through like, he puts on a cowboy hat and people are like, why does he have a cowboy hat in space? And I'm like, because he loves these movies, because he loves these things, because he understands what they are and they mean something to him. I hadn't really thought about that either. I think that's really interesting. I will say, like, with specifically with the Doomed Man, right? We're talking about Sergei Nechayev and how how to, like, make that play. That was a really fun bit of what do you call it? That was a fun bit of coincidence, in all honesty, where we were looking for a great word to play with, or a great way to use Doom as we talked about revolutionaries. And so my understanding of Sergei Nechayev, I'm not going to pretend I had his work in my back pocket. My understanding of him starts by Googling the words doomed and revolutionary, genuinely. And what came up was Sergei Nechayev, the revolutionary, is a doomed man. At which point I go, great. How do I read everything this guy's done so I understand what I'm talking about before I go throwing this into a comic book? But that's too good a phrase in terms of, like, what we're doing on this book and the thematics that we're playing with. So let's see if that functions. And then in digging into that and doing that research, that became a thing where I was able to be like, okay, great. We can we can anchor this book on that. I wish I could say, oh, that that character came up in research 5 years ago and I used it now. No, that was a place where I did a little bit of Google foo to see if there was something poetic and fun that could be played with, and then verified it outright. That said, that's not true of most things. That one's a sort of specific example. Most of the time, we're cooking up in the lab and go like with Le Chant de Partisan, which we reference. That's just a thing I love. I could sing it for you in French. Like it's one of the best war songs of all time. It's fantastic. If your readers haven't, if your listeners, if your viewers haven't heard this song, go ahead and just YouTube Le Chant de Partisan. There was a version that was done for France's anniversary as a nation, and it is a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful song.
All right, listeners, so
we
please stay after the credits to hear Jackson sing the song in French.
Yeah, I love it.
I was gonna say you just promised the internet.
Shit. Damn it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, actually, that surprises me a little bit, Jack, just because I know like readers, viewers out there don't know, but like Jack has probably a pretty sizable pile of revolutionary literature. It has been on his mind lately. So I think it's this book in particular was just very refreshing for us to be writing now, and for lots of reasons. But yeah, I think Bucky represents our feelings in a lot of ways.
In terms of what I'm reading right now, just to answer that other question, I've just finished a bit of light reading. I just finished The Rise and Fall of the Third Reich, which I've been reading for a little bit now. I never had read it. I knew enough, frankly, from my grandparents, who looks like my grandfather was in the war and was always very open about teaching me about. He fought in Africa, he fought in Germany. The No Dollars Deutschmarks story that Bucky tells in Thunderbolts World Strike #4. That's a true story. That's my grandfather's story. Just didn't have Steve in it, but otherwise that's a real story. So a lot of my understanding of World War II comes from family, and how it was spoken, and how we talked about fascism, and how we talked about the Nazis, and how we talked about standing up against that kind of thing within sort of my household. But I never really felt like I needed to read too deeply into the rise of it, and then looking around at sort of some of the decisions that are being made right now in the world. I really felt like it was important to look back at like 1930s Germany and better understand it, and better understand the place of artists and the place of insurgents in that, and the place of naysayers in that organization. So I just got done reading that, which has given me a whole bunch of really interesting things to think about, and a couple of things that Collin and I are doing right now are very influenced by maybe a better understanding of how fascism rises, and the complicity and complacency that culture needs in order to do that. So yeah, that's my little bit of heavy reading, and then I'm pivoting sort of as a treat. I'm pivoting into The Rise and Fall of the Galactic Empire, which is a book that was recently written by a World War I scholar that is a takeoff on Rise and Fall of the Third Reich, but just all with Star Wars information. It's just like every bit of like political and social and contextual information about the Galactic Empire. And I'm gonna read that kind of as a palate cleanser. Yeah.
Talk about an allegory.
Yeah.
I know, right?
Yeah.
I am reading. Let's see.
I see you're looking around like the phone book.
What am I reading? I recently read I Am a Cat. I read The Book with No Words. I'm reading Shel Silverstein's Where the Sidewalk Ends. I have a 7-month-old.
Oh, I get
and,
it. Everyone poops.
I read.
Yeah, it's a classic.
Everyone poops. These are the books that are. And then when he goes to sleep, actually Jackson got me a 4,000-page compendium of every piece of the history and lore of how Dungeons and Dragons was created.
Oh my god!
The entire history of Dungeons and Dragons, with all the first-person accounts and emails, but letters and pages and all the good stuff and all the sweet juicy behind the scenes.
Wow.
Between the crew and how all the dirty laundry. So I read that for roughly 5 minutes a night before my absolutely exhausted eyes collapse on me. and I sleep for 4 minutes before he starts screaming again.
You'll be done when they are 24 years old. Excellent.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's going to go up to college, and I'm going to say, but want to hear about advanced Dungeons and Dragons? As he jumps into his fucking spaceship and flies to school.
I love this.
I got to ask you, just another historical reference.
Yeah.
It was in issue 2, and Bucky quotes Winston Churchill about being the wrench. And I tried to find that reference. Is that a real one, or was that just artistic license?
No. We made that one up. No,
no. I'll never get that 10 minutes back.
Yeah, sorry. No, we
Keep
read
guessing.
on Alana Smith's recommendation. We read the book Churchill's Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare, which they made into a movie, but the movie is not representative of that book at all. The book is a really excellent history book about a bunch of really weird ne'er-do-wells who all work together to create the initial OSS. And it's, a guy who's making bombs in his backyard and is constantly almost blowing himself up, and a guy who is just obsessed with making RVs and has been making RVs on the British countryside for the last several years and ends up designing the first tanks, and a spy who's obsessed with like boxing, and an old British captain who had developed a version of knife fighting that was so deadly that the British were like, absolutely not, we cannot use this in warfare. It's too deadly. It's a really fantastic book because and beautifully sourced. And it was out of that the Be the Wrench came from. I don't think it's a direct quote from that book, but there's quite a bit of Churchill's worldview in that book, and his worldview was very much Be the Wrench. His worldview was like, and that's not true just of fascism. That was true of British culture. That was true of the complacency of his generals. That was true of the idea of gentlemanly warfare, which the British were very into before Churchill, and Churchill basically told them that notion would lose the war, and he was correct, because the fascists were never going to fight like gentlemen. So why should the British? I think like that book was a great bit of research up through this book, and was specifically it was like homework. Alana was like, you should read this book. She read our outline, and she was like, this is great, but if you want this to be better, you should read this book and infuse some of that in. So that's also why issue 2 operates the way it does, with the train heist and each person kind of doing their thing,
right?
And how that all puts together. That's all very much in the vein of how the actual OSS operated, which was a bunch of sort of renegade experts who are all very good at doing their one thing, all working together to try to take down a power so much greater than them.
We have so many questions I want to get to from our listeners. So patron Kyle Foster asks, when taking a classic character like Sharon Carter and making such a change in her as giving her a new superhero identity as the Destroyer, what is the process like? How far up the chain do they have to go to get it approved, and do they hope that other writers will pick it up and run with it? As a Sharon fan, I was really happy with the development and hoped it would lead to more exposure for her. So I guess this is really a two-part question, like one about Sharon and one about any character really you make major changes to.
Yeah, well, I think the Sharon of it all is actually really interesting, because we knew we wanted to utilize the character, but we also knew that we wanted to give her much more of an identity than she had in the recent past. One of the things that we really did love about her that had actually totally fallen off the character is her messiness, her anger, right? Like when she was introduced, she was Captain America's kind of wild girlfriend, who would meet him at the bar and get into fisticuffs and kind of be a handful for this guy from the 50s, 40s. And we love that. That's great. That's a very different kind of character than we see in a lot of Marvel stories right now, especially female characters. And once we realized that was something kind of that we really wanted to bring out in the character, then we started also kind of combining things and looking at other characters we had on the table, which was obviously Destroyer. that was a character that we had already revitalized into this new, young living bomb of a character. And eventually, sometimes Kismet just starts to cross wires in your mind, and you're like, well, and we realized this is the legacy, right? We're already playing with legacy. We're looking for a way to give Sharon a new sheen, and we realized these two things kind of just started to fit together. So it wasn't necessarily a vision of like, we want to make Sharon Carter Destroyer. How do we get there? It was much more of, how do we bring this character in the direction that we feel like she needs to go? And oh shit, don't these two things work nicely?
Yeah, I think that really came out of her relationship with Roger in the second volume. As we came into Invaders, we started to see how they interacted, and we started to see this like really great opportunity for both characters, because we knew that Roger wasn't going to stick around. Our whole objective with him was to take him on one last ride. Brian has passed. It's good to reunite them in death. Like, I thought that was a nice, beautiful moment for this character that otherwise was probably just going to fade into obscurity forever. So why not give him a great big final moment, have him save Cap and the Avengers, have him destroy fascism, into his last breath. That felt really right. But then if that happens and you don't follow it up, then it feels, to me, it feels like the thing that he and Brian, it was already a legacy. So the thing that he and Brian fought for somehow doesn't get answered here. It just felt like we needed to do that. So that one came a little organically. As far as what the actual process was, once we realized we were going to do it, we got in touch with Alana and said, hey, is this something that you'd be down with? And she said, hey, I think this is really interesting. And she went up the chain and made sure the chain was cool with it, and everybody was. And then Carmen designed the suit. We wrote it into 750, and we were off to the races. I wish she'd show up a little bit more in other people's books. I feel like not as many people are aware that it's happening with Sharon. So we sort of stuck around to make sure that she kept getting in the spotlight and getting a little bit more getting these moments where she can get them. But we'll see what happens with her after this. I'm curious if and when she shows back up, and if that's there. I'm sort of on the record as saying I'd really love to do a Destroyer miniseries. I think that would be really fun. Marvel hasn't had a ton of interest in that, which I imagine is not surprising. It's hard enough. It would be hard enough to try to pitch a Sharon Carter miniseries, let alone a Destroyer miniseries. But maybe someday. It's something that we're always kind of trying to look at, because ultimately it just felt like if you tried to describe Sharon and you're like in words, and you were like, all right, she's punchy, she's tough, she's willing to do the hard thing. She's hard scrabble. She gets in fights. Like, where Steve is kind of a connector and creator, Sharon's a destroyer. I felt like that really felt nice. It felt like a good shape for her. And so, I don't know. Hopefully we've not seen the last of that crazy skull mask.
Yeah, on the Marvel of it all, they tend to like shifting things up. Like they see an opportunity. As a mercenary, it makes for a cool new cover. Right, like they're always looking to kind of shake things up and get a headline. So by and large, they've been pretty. When we toss ideas like that up the chain, by and large, the answer is like, sounds neat, let's try it. Because in reality, they know that if it doesn't work, they can just move it on backwards. That's the power of licensed comics. But we have found them pretty on board generally with chasing some weirder ideas for these characters.
So speaking of shake things up and weirder ideas. So they were down with blowing up Shelbyville, Indiana.
yeah. Never got any pushback on that whatsoever. That was everybody was down with that from the get. Basically, the note there from Tom was, if you do this, it has to drive the whole story after that, right? Which is correct, right? If you do this, then that's what's hanging over Bucky. He's got to be thinking about that. That's got to be echoing in his mind. He has to exit 2 freaking out about it. He has to surrender in 3 because of it. He has to be tortured by Doom in 4 by using it, and he has to go back there in 5 and put it back together, right? Like, if you do Shelbyville, it can't just be a cool thing you do and then leave it at that. That's a huge moment for Bucky and a huge moment for the world, and you have to let it actually live. And I think that was a great note. It fed most of the story and made sure that by the end of Doomstrike, it really feels like one contiguous narrative.
The 5 stages of grief there.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yep. And for those of you who live in the actual Shelbyville, I assure you, we have no hard feelings against your lovely town. It is where Bucky was born. So it kind of, the map got, he put you on the map. He really did put the target on you. And we are very sorry to have pulled that trigger. I'm sure your town is absolutely lovely. I do distinctly remember going onto Google Maps and pulling some very specific images of the welcome to Shelbyville sign and putting it in there. So if it was a little too real, I do apologize.
I regret. I had this idea. And I really, really regret I didn't follow through on it. Man Cave Comics and Collectibles is in Shelbyville, Indiana. I wanted to reach out to the comic book store owner and say, "Do you have questions for Collin and Jackson?" So I let that one lie. But so Collin, you said previously that if you break something as writers, you need to put it back together. So do either of you have anything to say to the 20,000 residents of Shelbyville?
Your brave sacrifice will inspire the future, and you will not be forgotten.
Stand up against Doom, y'all. Stand up against Doom. I think actually everything we have to say about Shelbyville is in 4. Really, genuinely. I think like 4, when Bucky is tortured with the memories of the people of Shelbyville, and he's like, they didn't die recklessly. They died to fight you. I think that's like a meaningful moment. So I sort of think we have everything we have to say about that. I will say, they do say you got to put things back together. I'm actually really happy that they let us sit with Shelbyville. I think that's one of those things you don't want to put back together, at least not initially, right? I'm sure Shelbyville will come back together. I hope maybe Sam can show it at some point in New Avengers. I think it's great to show resilience and people coming back from that. I think that would be awesome. But for our purview, it was actually really important to leave a permanent black mark on the world that Bucky can think he caused. That felt like one of those few things where you don't have to put the toy back in the box. Yeah, we can give him back his old arm. He can start going by Winter Soldier again. We can put everything back to rights. Sure, absolutely. But that's a place where we didn't want to put the genie back in the bottle. Similar to our how we treat Nat and Bucky. We didn't break Nat and Bucky up. We kept them together. We got them back together, and we've kept them together. In fact, in issue 5, she specifically tells him that she loves him for the first time in the middle of a fight when he is not ready to hear it. We were very specifically not putting that back in the bottle because that was a part of the growth of the character, that he was ready for that relationship and that she saw something new in him that drew her back to him in that out of that relationship. His ability to be with Natasha and Natasha's ability to be with him is because of the journey they've experienced together over the course of the Revolution saga. And I think that that was another thing we felt like we didn't need to put back in the box. Like Sharon Carter Destroyer didn't put it back in the box, right? There are a lot of things we didn't put back in the box, but a lot of you put the you put the aesthetic things back. You fix those so that you're not hurting the next guy. But you don't want to undo everything you did. You want to make sure that some of that stuff sticks because that's what makes comics history great.
It's like visiting a national park. You want to leave it cleaner than you found, right?
Right.
So we will put those pieces back together. Don't leave anything broken, but being not broken doesn't mean you haven't changed.
I like that.
Earlier, you mentioned you were hopeful maybe some other writers would use Sharon as Destroyer in order to sort of keep that character going. So one of the things I was struck by in issue 4 was you use the Sal Romero Ghost Rider from World War II. And, I got to be honest with you, I hadn't been that familiar with Sal Romero. So I went back and I saw that that's a relatively new character introduced by Phil Johnson and Nick Klein in the Incredible Hulk series back in 2023. And then he was featured in that amazing Hellhunters miniseries. But that's it. And then sort of plucked out of those 2 stories and inserted into issue 4 of Doomstrike briefly.
And issue 2.
Oh, in issue 2. Yeah, good point. Yeah, at the end of. So tell me, why was that sort of do it? Let's use this character, or was that something you just wanted to do organically?
Little
No,
bit of
you,
both.
you, I mean, you, yeah, well, you started the conversation exactly right. Like every writer prays that the characters they create get to expand beyond their own work.
Mhm.
And if we don't do that, then who will, right?
Yeah.
We got to support our fellow creators. This is a great character that probably could be forgotten if he was left untended. So of course we want to bring him back and utilize him. It's
Mhm.
kind of like paying it forward. Hopefully then the next guys say, you know what? That destroyer was pretty cool. We do want to use that. Be the change you want to see in the world, right? Especially
Right.
amongst your allies, your fellow comic creators. Like let's work this
Exactly.
together to get that thing done that we all want.
Phil Kennedy Johnson is a friend from way back. In fact, I was at his first con as a creator, I think, at Boom. Collin and I were, and we sort of welcomed him into comics when he first came in, and I've just been so chuffed to see him grow and expand and become the writer that he is today. I think his Superman run is outstanding. I think he's done really incredible work across the board, and I think, frankly, he's probably got a really great Captain America run in him someday. He seems like the kind of
We
writer
were
who's just going to absolutely murder on that character someday. Um,
I had a conversation with him, and he was like, I was too nervous to pitch on the next Captain America. And I was like, Phil,
yeah,
my guy, you are a serving U.S. officer. Like, if there is anyone who knows how to do this, who has something vital to say about the character, like, please, for the love of God, next time put your hat in the ring.
he
Hopefully,
will.
my emphaticness. Yeah, oh, he will. It's a matter of
He
time.
will. It'll happen. It's just got to be the right time. But he will definitely do it, and I can't wait to read it. Honestly, I think he's going to be incredible at it. I really love what he does. I think what he does is really interesting and really cool. It's very similar to what we do, but also really different from what we do. And so being able to take I just read his work in general, and I was like, oh, I like this take on Ghost Rider. But then simultaneously, we were looking to expand the Thunderbolts and use some weirder characters. We part of World Strike's mandate was being very movie focused, right? That you'll notice that the team in World Strike looks very much like the team from the movie, with a few exceptions, obviously like Shang-Chi and some characters we wanted to put in there that we loved. Um, the second volume wasn't like that. The second volume, by nature of the fact that we played ball on the first volume, they were kind of like, do whatever you want, and if you can, please use some of the old Thunderbolts characters. And we were like, yes, please, we would love to. So that's why we got to come in and bring the whole Thunderbolts back and do Thunderbolts versus Thunderbolts and do some Songbird, and like that was great. It was really exciting for me as a fan of those characters. But then it opened up some opportunities to say, like, how can we do some fun, quick, heavy hitter stuff that's like, this character comes in, makes a big impact, and then dies. Like, that's great. How can we have some fun with that? And it felt like Sal was a really great opportunity for that. I think Alana, I think we were like, could we bring in Ghost Rider and just said Ghost Rider? And Alana was like, have you thought about using Ghost Rider 1944? Because we didn't know about Hellhunters. She was like, because we're going to be doing this Hellhunters miniseries, and he and Bucky already have a relationship. And it was like, absolutely perfect. No notes. That's exactly what we need. And of course, we ran in that direction. Yeah.
A couple more questions from our patrons. So
Yeah.
Tom Boyd, he's in the UK.
Lightning round.
He said, and this is more of a technical question. So he said, I just finished re-listening to the previous interviews, and I was wondering if they could expand on their work with the artists they work with, specifically, say, with Carmen. Or are Jackson and Collin writing detailed panel-by-panel descriptions? How many revisions get made, if any? When, if preliminary sketches come through? Do they have a WhatsApp group or similar? I'm just fascinated by the nitty-gritty of the whole process. And then he finishes it with this question. Also, they absolutely burned Diamondback during your first interview. So I have to ask, how dare you? And I think, Collin, you called her a dumpster fire when you were on the show. So
With love, with love. The best characters are dumpster fires. And I stand by what I said.
So the process is pretty simple. We do write full script. We write panel-to-panel descriptions. We often write layouts. If we think something is a grid, we'll say it. If we think it isn't, we'll say it. If we think it's got to be weird and flowing and the panels should bleed into each other, we'll say it. We'll call colors. We call everything. We're pretty detailed writers because we're not like Alan Moore style detailed writers. Look at any of the Watchmen scripts if you want to know what I'm talking about. But we're still quite detailed. And that's because we tend to be going after something. Now, the more we work with an artist, the less detailed we have to be. At this point with Carmen Carnero, we're pretty, she's like our sister in art, man. Like I feel like we can just write to Carmen and she knows how to bring it to life often better than we could pitch it. And that's great because we all share a sensibility, and that's what made Captain America as strong as it did. You know, I think I love our relationship with Geraldo Borges on Thunderbolts, and I love our relationship with Ken Walker, and I love our relationship with every artist that we work with. But Carmen and us, I think, hit a sync that's different. Like that was a real, like, to use the Guillermo del Toro terminology, we're drift compatible, right? We really just were working on the same page at every point, and every time that we were like, we want to do this, Carmen was like, what about this? And it was like, that's better, right? Like that's always our process with Carmen. So we have an email with her. Carmen doesn't speak a lot of English, so actually her husband translates our scripts for her in Spain, and then she draws the scripts from what he drew. So it's funny, when I met her and her husband, they crashed my honeymoon. When they showed up and we hung out, that was the first time that I learned that Carmen didn't speak English, because I'd been working with her over email for 2 years.
Oh wow! How about that?
Which was a trip. And obviously she speaks better. I mean, she speaks English, but I speak very fast, so she doesn't speak Jackson English. And I think that was yeah. So like that's the process. We write scripts, and then there's layouts.
I think that to give you the 10-second how the sausage is made, scripts, notes on scripts lead to a version 2 of the scripts. Generally, version 2 of the script goes to the artist, who then creates layouts. Those are in pencils. We give notes on the layouts, which then create inks, which we give notes on the inks. Then the inks go to colors. We give notes on the color, and then we get a lettering. That's that original V2 script. We're going to look at the art. We're going to collaborate. We're going to take that V2 script. We're going to turn it into a lettering script. That lettering script is going to slam onto those colors, create a first draft of the final comic. We're going to jump in there and then do notes on that, which then ideally leads to a last pass. And if our editors, if we like our editors, we will give no notes on that last one. And if we don't like our editors, we will give lots of notes on that last one. JK, editors listening, we love you all equally. And then that will produce the final book. You'll notice that as writers, we had something like 8 touch points on that book. So, yes, it takes forever for an artist to actually draw the book. But one of the one of the hidden labors of being the writer is you are also touching every single part of that process and helping guide the storytelling. So it is far more than just write script, walk away. You really do have to also wear your producer hat. But to speak to that initial thing, the thing to always remember is at the beginning, it's just you and the artist, right? It's why comics are so wonderful and so powerful. It starts with just script is a letter to your artist, trying to tell a story and trying to create something that the 2 of you or 3 of you agree is rad. It is cool. It is emotional. It is impactful. Then editors get to be involved. Then everyone else kind of gets to throw their weight in the ring. But like, it really is your conversation with that artist to create something beautiful and rad.
Well said, man. That was like, that's about as succinct a version of that as I've ever seen.
That is how the sausage is made. Well done.
From behind the scenes, I teach a special lecture at my local university.
I knew it. I knew that sounded like a professor.
Yep, I teach a special lecture on how comics get made. So if you want, I can pull up my PowerPoint slides.
Oh boy.
And we can go through it step by step.
That'll be after the credits, right after Jackson sings the French song.
Love it.
Yeah, stay tuned for an hour-long lecture.
We gotten so many other questions, and we can't get to them all. But some of them basically are essentially, we love what they do. We loved on the Captain America. We loved what they did on Thunderbolts. We'd love to see them do X. So Aaron Paul said he would love to see you guys do a sequel to the United States of Captain America miniseries. another asked,
Incredible.
when are they going to come back onto Captain America? That it was too brief a run and it was amazing. So we got a lot of those as well. So I know it's
Um,
hard for you to say, but
very, very sweet. I mean, from their lips to Marvel's ears, like God, we'd love to return to Captain America, and I am convinced that on a long enough timeline, we will return to Cap. We will one day have the reins of Steve Rogers. That sounds a little weird, but while there's nothing directly in our future for these characters, as Jack kind of eloquently pointed out, this is the end in a lot of ways of what we have to say about Bucky and kind of his corner of the Marvel universe at this time. Like, yeah, we would love to return to it. And the fact that it did resonate with so many people is just so awesome. And you know what? I'll go ahead and say this: if you do have questions that we're not getting to, that you think are real sharp, email them to us. Well, we can write you up a little answer, and then you can read them to your audience at a later date as a treat.
fantastic. Well, we will.
Happily.
And now I'm gonna have to burn my email account. Okay. So let's get to this because Free Comic Book Day was last month, and so one of the books Marvel put out was this one here with Fantastic Four because they're a little in the news right now, but
they're hot.
but at the bottom here, plus Giant Size X-Men by Lanzing Kelly, and then there's a story in the back here that I if you haven't read it, it's a little interesting because it is the classic. What was it? It was Giant Size X-Men #1, right? Where they're all bursting out, and but what? There's a Miss Marvel on the front. So tell us a little bit about this and what's coming next.
I don't know what you're talking about. No, we have for anybody who didn't follow us over to the X office after our time on Cap or Guardians, for the last year, we have been telling a story called NYX over in the From the Ashes line. While the main X-Men books are kind of doing their own things, NYX is really a story not really about superheroes, but about superhero diaspora or like mutant diaspora in New York after the fall of Krakoa. It's a story that is about the people and the politics and the difficulty of holding on to your culture and language when you're functioning inside of a human world. It's a story about immigration, and it's a story about family, and it's a story about education, and it's a story about bigotry. It's for anybody who's like a big fan of Sentinel of Liberty #4, I really think you should read NYX. The book, they function on very similar premises in terms of like what they're trying to do, and every issue of NYX is a one-shot that dives into an individual mutant who is trying to deal with this, mostly young mutants, with the exception of Charles Xavier, who has like his own issue in issue 9. The anchor of that book is Kamala Khan, a character who I've loved since she began. I've been a huge Ms. Marvel nerd. I have all of her books and single issues. I just think she's great. I think she's new Peter Parker. I just think she's always been this really remarkably relatable character, especially to comics fans and to people who love this stuff. It's like, what if Peter Parker were a comics nerd? It's great. I love it. So for me, Ms. Marvel was a great opportunity. I think we saw her as a really great opportunity to come and invite her into mutanting, because she was recently made a mutant by Jonathan Hickman and Zeb Wells and Jerry Duggan and a bunch of people who aren't us. But when we showed up, she'd just been made a mutant, and somebody had to make that into a story. And that really became our mission as people who love this character, to take her along this journey and bring her to somewhere. Incidentally, along the way, she interacts with Mia and David and Hudson and the characters from Sentinel of Liberty. So if you are missing the SHIELD community organization that you saw at the end of Sentinel of Liberty, you will see it show up here and there in NYX.
Very cool. That's awesome.
So as NYX wrapped down, and as Kamala, as issue 10 is the end of that book, and Kamala has to sort of come to a decision about her mutantum, she has decided that, spoiler alert to anybody who hasn't read NYX, Kamala ends her story in NYX pretty down on herself about being a mutant, and deciding that perhaps she needs to stop being Ms. Marvel for a while and maybe stop identifying as a mutant until she really understands how she can both be a member of her family and not lie to them about who she is and what she is. And she has to sort of figure that out. And so the story that's going to take her on that journey, the sort of Christmas Carol that's going to take her through a bunch of understanding and help her better understand herself and her objectives and who she wants to be moving forward, is called Giant Size X-Men. It's really just called Giant Size. There's Giant Size X-Men #1, Giant Size Dark Phoenix Saga, Giant Size Age of Apocalypse, Giant Size House of M, and then finally Giant Size X-Men #2. 5 issues that take us along the entirety of X-Men history through 5 huge X-Men events, ending in a new huge X-Men event in Giant Size X-Men #2. And along the way, Kamala is going to be basically the butterfly effect in X-Men history. She's going to fall back in time, and just by being there, be accidentally disassembling some of the greatest stories in the Marvel canon. Something Kamala Khan does not want to do at all. Something that we, as writers, don't want to do at all. And so, but here we are trying to do it. And so she is going to be basically fighting and stumbling and thinking and charming her way through X-Men history and trying desperately not to break it along the way as she fights a time-traveling villain with deep lore in X-Men, that being a new version of the classic X-villain Legion. So we're really excited to put Kamala against Legion across a time-traveling madness story. The artists are incredible. It's Adam Kubert on Giant Size X-Men #1, Giant Size X-Men #2, which was enough to get us to say yes, sight unseen. Hey, do you want to work with Adam Kubert? Yes.
Yes.
2 is Rod Reese doing a fully painted Dark Phoenix saga, which was absolutely incredible. 3 is CF Villa, the incredible modern X-Men artist who's doing just wonderful work on Age of Apocalypse, which I think might be the best thing we've written in a minute. I'm really proud of Giant Size Age of Apocalypse. Giant Size House of M is by Francesco Mana, which is also a beautiful book. And then Giant Size X-Men #2, as I said, is Adam Kubert. So, hey, we just got a fun little
corner of my baby interacting with the screen.
Yeah. But yeah, it's a really exciting story. It's going to be our last X-Men story at Marvel, except for obviously the Hellfire Vigil, which is going to be the end of that. And we wrote the first 4 or 5 pages of that. But it'll end out our last kind of year and a half of fun with the X Office. It's really been a really incredible time. We've learned a lot. We've obviously told some stories we really love. And this is the capstone for them. But you don't need to have read any of NYX to get this. Really, you don't need to have read anything to get this. This book you can jump into, and it's going to bring you along all of X-Men history. So strap in, have fun. It's going to be a great ride. And it drops next Wednesday. It's any minute.
Ooh. Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, you got me intrigued. It's been years since I've read an X book, so you got me intrigued.
Take a look.
What else you got going? Anything else coming up? Maybe in the distinguished competition or principles of necromancy or anything like that?
We are in a little bit of we're taking a breather. Fans of ours know that for a while there, we were doing almost 5 books a month. The schedule was absolutely bananas. So we're pulling back. We're kind of focusing on some self-care. So you're not going to see as many books from us on the shelves in the immediate future. We are wrapping up our run over on Star Trek. It has been announced. Right now, we're in the middle of our massive second crossover event, Lore War, which has been a real epic journey, a secret wars for the Star Trek universe. That series will end on the beautiful Star Trek Omega, which is an incredible issue where every single artist who's ever worked on this run was brought back into an ultimate jam session, celebrating this story and kind of putting down all these characters as the plot, as the world of Star Trek moves towards Nemesis. It's a beautiful issue that we're really proud of. And then it might seem like our time is done. But our time with Trek is not done. But for more information on that, you will have to wait for San Diego Comic-Con, where IDW will be more than happy to provide you with an ash can of something very cool. So hold on to your hats for San Diego, then we will have something absolutely to crow about. It is one of the things we have always been excited to write Star Trek. This is kicking it up to another level. we are incredibly excited for the next phase of that story.
I sort of think of this book as absolute Star Trek or ultimate Star Trek. It's designed to be a jumping on point for people who don't like Star Trek. If you haven't read any of our Star Trek work, but you love our work from anywhere else, this book is for you. This book is a new take on Star Trek that fundamentally rethinks a lot of the ways that you might think these stories function. And I can't wait for people to see what it is. I'm super excited. And in all honesty, it is the only book we're writing right now. Where we used to have to push out a script a week, this book we're taking a script a month. We have a lot more time to think it through, to make it better and better and better, to shave off the fat, to find the great moments. We're all really working to tell a truly timeless, truly excellent book that we're aiming for the stars on this one. I'm really excited. But that is genuinely all we're doing. Everything else we're doing is secret and not in comics, unfortunately. We're doing quite a bit of work in Hollywood. We're doing quite a bit of work in gaming. There's going to be some stuff that people are going to see from us that's going to, I think, really surprise them soon. But
yeah,
it
is important to realize. Yeah. Friends of ours out there, it's important to remember, it's important to realize that just because we're not writing comics doesn't mean the hive mind is not maintained. It's absolute insane productivity. The future projects that we are going to be announcing, ideally pretty soon, are just we're massively excited. So just because we're not working in comics doesn't mean that we're not working in things that people can absolutely fall in love with.
Yeah, and we're always looking for where that next thing is going to happen. So we're plotting. We're actually plotting with Carmen on something right now that we're really excited about. We are plotting with a few other artists who we really love about doing some projects. We're looking to try to do more Principles of Necromancy. That's really much more on Magma Comics and their viability. So we're waiting to see what happens there. We're cooking up some great creator-owned stuff at IDW. There's a lot of stuff that's cooking. And then there'll probably be another period where suddenly Collin and I are doing 4 to 5 books a month. But we decided to take a break for our sanity and for maybe the sanity of the market and give everybody a breather and really focus up on this one book. So can't wait to talk about that soon. But in the meantime, Giant Size X-Men is going to be our sort of the only book on the shelves from us following the end of Doomstrike and Power Man Timeless over.
Well, everybody book your tickets now for San Diego Comic-Con for that ash can, and make sure you say hello. And if they want to just follow, where's the best place to get news when you're reporting your new projects?
At Hivemind Actual. That's 2 words. Hivemind Actual. Just no space, no nothing. Hivemind Actual. Go to any social media platform. You'll find us there under that. And we post every week about our new projects, about what's coming out. We talk about FOC so we can make sure that you can tell your stores about it. We make sure to tell you where the books are coming out. Every once in a while, we're about to do a big contest. We're always doing some fun stuff on Hivemind Actual, which is sort of a new effort for us to, rather than trying to run disparate personal social media accounts, to rather do something that's really just fan directed and allows you a really easy pipeline to us. So that's the one, and that's where we're going to be. Can't wait to interact with you there.
Fantastic. Well, we'll put a link in our show notes. And one last thing, if you are at San Diego Comic-Con, Jackson, anybody ever tell you how much they enjoyed you in Star Trek Next Generation?
Yeah, on occasion. It's funny. So for anybody who doesn't know that I look a lot like Wil Wheaton, and this comes up a bit in my life, especially because I hang around conventions a lot, and so inevitably this happens. It's a bit of a funny story for me, though, because my wife was Will's assistant for several years. I have a beer fridge in the other room that was gifted to us by Wil Wheaton. Will is
that's cool.
Will's a delightful guy and a really excellent, he's been an excellent kind of friend and occasional collaborator. He worked with us on Star Trek. He came in and did a story in Star Trek 400 that I helped hook him up for. So I've just in general been really happy to have Will in our lives and as a force in my life, as a person who did in fact love him on Star Trek Next Generation, as somebody who grew up with Wesley. It is now pretty wild that I've hung out with Will a bit and am often what do you call it? mistaken for him. What I
Mhm.
will say is, maybe I shouldn't stand next to him. Like that's a thing I've done a few times and probably
Mhm.
isn't something I should do, because that can be a little bit of a that can make me look less cool because he's Wil Wheaton and I'm Jack.
Well, next time I run into Will at a Comic-Con or a convention, I'm going to say, has anybody ever mistaken you for Jackson Lansing?
Yes. Oh my God.
There
Please
you
do. Please do.
go.
Please do. That would make me so happy.
All
Actually,
right, done.
anybody who's hearing this, if you ever meet Will in a signing line, please ask him, does anybody ever tell you you look like Jackson
There
Lanzing?
you
I
go.
can't tell you how much that would mean to me. Thank you. Yes. Yes.
Oh, fantastic. Well, Collin, Jackson, as always, it's a pleasure having you guys on the show, and we can't wait to follow and see what's next coming for you guys. So thanks again for coming.
Rick, Robert, always a pleasure. Thank you
Always
guys.
a blast.
Absolute pleasure.
All right. Well, I got to say, the two of those guys are, I mean, the Hive Mind, they're great writers, but they're even more fun to talk with, together. They, so many fun stories there.
I mean, we have interviewed a lot of folks, right, on this show, and there's probably a percentage of them, relatively small, where like you could have them back, and in some cases we've had some folks back a couple times, 3 times, and there's always something more to talk about. But I feel like with Jackson and Collin, like, man, we could have them back every week, man, and just plumb the richness, of the discussion, because they always have something more to talk about, right? There's always some angle we haven't explored yet, and they're just nice guys. They're smart guys, well-educated guys with a lot of different interests and tastes, and there's just always more.
Yeah, I loved your question about the books that
Sure,
that you must have read to bring into the stories, and both of them were like, oh, we never gave that any thought, but yeah, great question by you.
Good, just great discussion.
Yeah.
Good guys, and learn something new every time.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to check out those giant size X-Men books. First of all, love Andy Cooper. Had a chance to meet him in at OAX this past year. In fact, if you had come, Bob, you would have met him too.
Yeah.
Maybe January, or sorry, it's February of 2026. What do you think?
Is it February?
February, yeah, but they moved it a few weeks later, which is actually after the NFL playoffs are over. So
okay.
I can actually stay a little bit longer. But
I've already
booked.
In a bit of a panic to get home this time.
I was, because it was NFC Championship game, and I literally got home like seconds before kickoff.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I totally missed the last day too. But yeah, I've already booked my hotel.
Oh wow!
And I got my tickets. So we're gonna have to make it happen, Bob.
I know, one of these days we'll have to make it happen. February sounds good though. February is a lot easier than January, because January I've got some kind of high profile work things going on in January. I think Casey was out of town or something too.
Yeah. There's always something. All right.
I need to keep her home more often.
All right, everybody, come back next episode where we return to the Cap Becomes Nomad. This is part 5 of the 1974 story. We're going to be covering Captain America 180, and we'll be covering that panel by panel. And it's getting good, Bob. This is actually the one where I don't want to give anything away, but the cover kind of does. Cap dons a new costume, and it is the Nomad.
Right. Yeah, that cover's a real spoiler.
Indeed. So come back next episode where we will cover that panel by panel. And as Bob, it has been an absolute blast, Rapid Gap, with you.
It has. I can't wait till next week, Rick.
All right. He's Bob Lucius. I'm Rick Verbanis. And if you don't mind, please rate, review, and subscribe wherever you listen. If you're on YouTube right now, give us a thumbs up. I mean, come on. How hard is it? Just hit the thumbs up button. And we always love getting your comments, whether it's in the Facebook group or on YouTube. You can also do it on Spotify. We love the 5-star reviews on Apple. So all of that helps get more people listening and hearing about us. So please, if you don't mind, and thank you very much. And as always, we thank you for listening to another episode of the Captain America Comic Book Fans Podcast.
All right, here we go.
New Phineas and Ferb is here.
We're back, baby.
For 104 more days
I know what we're gonna do today.
of summer vacation.
I am ready for summer shenanigans. Let's do it. Oh, yeah.
All right! We're gonna bust Phineas and Ferb once and for all!
Are we gonna do this again?
New inventions, shenanigans, innators, adventures, and songs.
Brand new summer vacation.
New Phineas and Ferb starts June 5th on Disney Channel and next day on Disney Plus on DisneyPlus.Disney.com.